Hi, I'm Robert Glazer from Ripe Chartered Accountants, and I'd like to introduce you to Dan Rhodes of Daniel Rhodes and Associates. Hi, Dan.
Good morning. Morning. Hi.
Hi. And Dan, you're a brand expert.
Well, I like to think so, yeah.
Okay.
Brand and marketing communications.
Great. And how would you sort of define a brand? I mean, I think we're all aware of what brand means in terms of large companies like Coca-Cola, but I guess what does brand mean for the SME market in particular?
Well, it's the same really. I mean, obviously, you wouldn't be a household name if you're an SME. But a brand really should follow the same definition for a small business as it does for a large. And really what a brand is about is it's really the personification of a clearly defined set of attributes, differentiators and values.
Okay.
What it is also is it's a promise, it's an experience, and it's a memory. What it isn't, a brand, which a lot of particularly smaller businesses make the mistake of thinking, is that it is not a logo. Okay. A logo obviously is an intrinsic part of a brand identity, but that is not what a brand is.
So it's much more than that. It gets to the essence or the heart of the business.
Yes, it should be. It should really communicate what differentiates and what a business, what their proposition is, and also why potential customers should use them, and that should be encapsulated in a brand rather than a logo. So when I say brand, I mean all forms of communications, everything from the way the receptionist answers the phone to the way your business card looks and your website looks and how you sound. So a brand is really about articulating the personality of an organisation.
Okay, I noticed you said promise earlier on. I guess that would mean a promise not only to the outside world, to customers and suppliers, but internally as well.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. For a brand to be truly successful, your internal audience, your team, your staff need to really understand what your brand is all about before you can successfully communicate it externally. So that is all part of the of an essential part of the process.
So looking at corporate values and
yes, absolutely. The starting point is doing all the strategic work on the brand, getting everybody to understand internally and buy into it. Because if they don't buy into it, you won't be able to sell it externally. Right. So everybody needs to understand it, be enthused by it, and understand how they communicate to the outside world. Then it's time to make that
buy-in
transition.
Must be quite a challenge.
It depends how it's communicated. What you don't want to do is impose, if you are thinking of rebranding, what you don't want to do is be in a situation where the first thing your staff know about it is on launch day.
Right.
So providing you can follow a very clear internal communications path, where you get internal buy-in and you get involvement to a point, then you can successfully bring your staff along.
Does that mean that the team has to really buy into the same values as the owner or the directors?
Yes. Well, generally, values should really be established as part of a team. It depends how large your organisation is. For smaller companies, I generally would work with in two stages. I'd work with the owner managers or the CEO or directors at a very high level to kick off the project in terms of what they see their values are. But bear in mind that they're the ones with the vision. Right. I wouldn't expect someone lower down in the team to have the vision for the company, but they should share it. Yeah. Well, they could help shape it, but really from the top, I want to hear what the vision is, what the commercial goals are, and then start to talk about values, but involve people more widely in that discussion, so that at the end of it, everybody's agreed on what those values are and everyone understands that.
Right. Okay. That's obviously core to creating your brand. And how often should a company review their brand to make sure it's still relevant?
Well, firstly, I think formal review, you're talking about probably every 5 years. But having said that, there should be an ongoing evolution of the brand. Whether you change, and just come back to the logo bit, that doesn't mean you change the logo. But you should be constantly evolving your brand messaging, as either a reaction or preempting what's going on in your market, what your competitors are doing.
Right.
I'm talking broadly about brand communications. Okay, so you've set off, you've rebranded, you've done all this fantastic work.
Yeah.
Well then, stuff happens. You need to be fully aware of what's going on in your market, your competition, and you evolve your message, you adopt new marketing strategies and channels, obvious one, social media, and that can be embraced not just for your own benefit in terms of a dialogue with your audience,
right,
but keeping tabs on your competition.
Okay.
A great way to find out what your competitors are doing is follow them on Twitter or on Facebook.
So there's two sides to it in a way. I guess your core values don't really change, they ground you, but you're reviewing your brand to remain flexible and change with the time, particularly in this day and age when change happens so quickly.
Yeah, your values should be consistent, and that's very important to bear in mind. I'm working with a company at the moment where they have some new product offerings coming online, and they may start to diversify slightly into different sectors and markets, and they're concerned about the rebranding program we're going through and how relevant that's going to be. But that's quite right. What you were saying is that your values should be consistent throughout everything you do. That's a company statement of your beliefs, and that should be consistent throughout whichever way your business heads. And of course your vision may change slightly depending on market, but that's why you need to constantly evolve.
Okay. So if a company hasn't thought about their brand or their branding, what are they missing out on?
Well, they're missing out on an opportunity to leverage their brand for growth. Everything that I do with a company is about commercial benefit for them. It's not about self-indulgent great designs that look good in my portfolio. It's very much about what the commercial reality is. And the starting point is working with the owner managers. What are your commercial goals and aspirations? And really, a brand identity is one of the key elements that will get you along that roadmap to your desired outcome.
So in a way, companies need to consider their brand before they even start on their marketing or sales strategies.
Absolutely, because how will they know if they're on brand when they're marketing their messages?
So what's the sort of process companies have to go through to, if say they haven't considered branding before? What are the sort of steps they need to take?
Well, I have a methodology that I call designing commercial advantage.
Right.
And that's a set of clearly defined stages that one goes through.
Right.
We start off with the inquire stage, which is some things we've just touched upon. So that's really obviously understanding the business, getting under the skin of it, establishing what the vision is, and then working with the client to establish the values, the USP, if there is one, and I have to say that it's very difficult to have a truly unique selling point.
Sure.
I like to talk in terms of, great if you've got one, otherwise it's about key differentiators.
Sure.
So that's looking at the competitors, perhaps exploiting some of their weaknesses, building on some of your strengths, and really working out what is your value proposition, what are you offering your clients, what's the added value that you offer, what makes you different, and the most important question, why you? Why should a potential customer choose you over a competitor?
Sure.
And you need to answer that question in a clearly defined way, and it's no good just saying the same thing. You've got to benchmark what your initial answers are against. Would your competitors say that? And if they would, forget it. You need to come up with something that's clearly defined. So after the inquire stage and you've really defined what your values are, what your differentiators are, then it's about the think stage, which is creating a brand strategy based on the insights that you've gathered. Right. So, okay, we understand where the business is going. We understand what makes it different. What brand strategy are we going to put in place in order to deliver that? And the output of that is really an internal design and branding brief for my team to go away and come up with some concepts, which leads into the next stage, the create stage. So that's going from presenting the client with concepts for a new or revitalised brand identity that fits the brief that we've agreed, that will help achieve the vision, getting feedback on the various options we present, refining that until sign off so the client's perfectly happy. The next stage is delivery. So that's about delivering the tangibles that are required. So the obvious one, stationery, website, could be vehicle livery, could be sales collateral, whatever the client needs. The logo will be in there somewhere, yeah.
Right.
Then there's a review stage, which again is ongoing. So you need to review the activities that you've gone through,
Yeah.
see how successful they are, measure them wherever possible,
Yeah.
and then fine-tune things and move on to the evolve stage where you're continuing that loop. So you're really having a good look at what your activities have been
Yeah.
and see where the best returns are.
Okay.
And that's where you shift your resources and then constantly evolve that.
Okay. There have been a few high-profile rebranding cases recently which have been met with a certain amount of cynicism. How do you avoid that negativity when you're going through a rebranding exercise?
Yeah, I mean, the knee-jerk reaction quite often is, oh God, how much is that costing? Unfortunately, one gets messages in the media that, this big organisation's rebranded and it's cost them £400 million.
Yeah.
So that is one of the areas that one has to mitigate against.
Right.
Of course, that's a little misleading because what they're talking about out of that budget, its primary cost is rolling it out worldwide. So you're talking about, rebuilding all BP's petrol stations worldwide. So again, it's the mitigating cynicism and getting people to buy in is all about communications.
Right.
So you need to make sure that there's internal buy-in and external buy-in.
Yeah.
And as we touched on before, right from the outset with the internal buy-in, once you've committed to do this, you need to let your team know what you're undertaking, why you're undertaking it, and what the benefits to the company and them particularly are going to be.
Yeah.
Once you've got that program rolling, you need to regularly communicate with them what stage of the project you are. If you're in a really small team, they might all be involved already, so there may be less of that.
Yeah.
With larger teams, you need to keep them up to date on where you are, and then share things at key stages. You may do an interim presentation on, this is the brand identity that we're going with. You don't necessarily want to share, if you've got a large team, every single option, because you won't move forward very quickly. And then right the way through to an internal launch, which obviously should be before an external launch, where you present to the team the output of everything they've been hearing about. But there's a similar challenge, of course, externally. You don't want your customers thinking, how much have they just spent on that? I want a better deal on what the fees they're charging me or the cost. So again, that's about deciding early on how you're going to communicate and launch this revised brand or new brand. Right. And that may be a soft launch, it may be a more formal launch. What has often worked well in the past for my clients is perhaps doing a key launch around a trade event, for example, where you might have a little event where you'll present to your customers the new brand after you've told them the story about why you've done it, and again, what it means for them. How are they going to benefit from it? It shouldn't be one-way traffic. And what we tend to see with things like this is not only do you get great external buy-in, they're genuinely interested in the story. It gives you an opportunity to re-engage with your customers, which obviously has commercial benefit. And invariably, I see a large spike in new business from my customers and my clients post this, because what tends to happen is, existing customers, particularly if you've been working with them for a long time, don't necessarily know everything that you do and you have to offer. So you get fantastic opportunities for cross-selling. So many times I've had my customers come and say, I didn't realise you did that. I'm buying that from someone else. I'll now give that business to you. So it's a positive story. There's nothing negative about it at all. And one shouldn't be shy about what you're doing, because it will help to move the business forward.
Okay. You mentioned communication a few times. Is that one of the most important things when marketing a business or a brand, or are there other very important factors as well?
In terms of marketing your business, communication is essential. Are you talking about outside of marketing communications, or?
Well, you want to show off your new brand.
Yeah.
What are the really important things in doing that?
Well, firstly, when you launch it, you should make a big splash, and that doesn't have to be expensive necessarily, but you should find the best channels and the best routes to make an impact and tell that story. And you need to embrace all avenues that are open to you. It's very much dependent on a particular company. What I would suggest is a review of the existing channels and marketing strategies that are in place. How do we normally talk to and engage our customers? What I find a great deal of the time is many customers, although this is becoming less so, many clients spend a lot of money on advertising, for example, traditional advertising, where they don't they have no idea what return they get or whether they get one at all, but that's what they've always done. Now, there are various ways that you can either review that and maybe think, okay, we're going to replace that with online campaigns where we'll be able to track and measure our spend, because obviously embracing technology, you can get reports on where your new customers have come from and how cost effective that is. If traditional press ads are still important to you, then why not put a QR code on there, which are the funny little boxes that you scan with your smartphone, so that people want more information, they zap that, and that means you can automatically record where that has come from. You can put a unique code in there so you know it's come from that publication and you've engaged them through that route. And the same with your social media if you're utilising that on there. So we're living in a marketing age now where it's much easier to measure the cost effectiveness. And I would advise, whether you rebrand or not, for you to regularly review your marketing spend and make sure you're spending it in the best place.
And what going back to sort of rebranding in general, what are the, well, not just rebranding, but setting a brand, what are some pitfalls that are quite common?
I suppose one of the largest pitfalls is what we've already discussed. It's if you don't get internal and external buy-in, then you do risk being it being negatively received. Other pitfalls are about inconsistency. So you put a lot of energy at the beginning and all to the point of this really exciting moment where you launch your new brand. But a brand is really judged by its weakest component, not its strongest. So it's all very good, you've got a beautiful new website, great business card handover, and then you put an ad out or something that just isn't consistent, either by messaging or look or feel. So the ways to mitigate that is brand guidelines, which are very commonplace in larger companies. If you're a smaller company, it can be something very simple. It can be about the do's and don'ts with the usage of the logo and the colour palette. It can be something quite modest. But most importantly, no matter what size your company, is to make someone responsible, make somebody brand police for you. If you have a marketing director or marketing manager, it would normally be one of them, so everything is run through them. If you're a smaller company, then you may just choose to appoint somebody that has the resources and the understanding of the brand and what you're trying to communicate. Obviously, it's not an issue if you are getting your agency to produce everything that you send out. That's not an issue because they understand the brand. They will make sure it's on brand. But where you're using different supplies, it might be one person for the web. You might use a printer to mock up something for you. Then some modest guidelines, but whichever way, brand police have to sign it off.
Okay, so if a company is using a brand agency like your own, you would control it and make sure it works properly. In other cases, I guess the directors have to think, does this fit my brand? And continuously ask that question and keep it at the forefront of their minds.
Is it on brand? And one has to be one has to put all personal preferences aside. So sometimes I come across managing directors that happen to like the colour green and say, well, okay, actually that ad's fine, but make it all green. Well, if your corporate colour is blue, then that's really not a good idea. So it's actually best left. One wouldn't normally do this at director level anyway. But even with the larger organisations, even if we're the main agency, I would always do brand guidelines anyway, because you shouldn't restrict your client to always having to use you for everything. There will be other occasions, so they can just send that on. We usually do it just as a PDF with resources. They might have master logos attached to it. They can send it out anywhere in the world, and they know what they get back.
It must be very frustrating if you're involved with a company and you've set all these branding plans, and they outsource certain bits like stationery or website design which don't fit in, it must drive you crazy.
Yeah, and I would always highlight that to a client if it's a problem.
Yeah.
But not from the respect that I feel that means that the client has to use myself. I think they should be using different suppliers, particularly if they've got long-term relationships. But if you supply the rules, people know what to follow. It also saves. I mean, although there's depending on the size of the guidelines, there might be a small investment in those. It should save the client money, because what they don't have is another party umming and ahhing about how they're going to set the template or the style or the fonts out or the colours. They've got all of that, so it should make it very cost effective to roll out the any campaign or any piece of collateral.
I guess it goes back to communication.
Yes.
You're all going to talk to each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. And what would you consider to be the other added benefits of branding?
Well, generally when I work with clients about their brand, they're very much focused, which is quite natural, particularly with owner managers. They're very much focused about, okay, how are we going to get more business from our customers? How's this identity going to really help us build our business and gain market share? And of course, that is our key focus. But what we don't forget about, and what the client often does, is the added benefit of by having a really strong, clearly defined brand identity, something that's really engaging and compelling, you're also going to attract the best people to your company.
Right.
So every company that has any kind of ambitious vision can only achieve it with the best people.
Sure.
And you can only attract the best people if you've got the right kind of communications and brand identity. So I've got countless examples where I've rebranded companies and they've managed to attract some fantastically high caliber candidates that would normally go to the bigger players, but they come to the smaller ones because they're engaged and they feel that the brand is, they feel
connect with it.
Exactly, they can connect with it, they buy into the values. Values shouldn't just be about what your values are to your customers, it's what are your values to working there or attracting key people. So, and with, particularly in the professional industry, with new employees, they might also bring with them some nice new clients. So you should expect a return on your investment in a brand as well.
And can you measure that return?
You can with assistance from the client end. That's often challenging. Clients are very busy, but one should be able to measure the effectiveness. Obviously, sometimes it's hard to make tangible, direct attribute to a brand relaunch. But certainly, as I cited before, post relaunch of most of my clients' companies, big spike afterwards, but it doesn't tail off if you continue to run with it and you continue to communicate those clearly defined messages about why you. So, and that comes back to my comment about your brand constantly evolving, and I don't mean changing, but it's be true to your values and your differentiators and keep that message going, and then you'll undoubtedly help you achieve your vision.
So business owners should really consider it as an investment.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's an investment, not a cost. The same way you would invest in any kind of asset for your business. And at the end of the day, that is going to be one, if not the most valuable assets you have, is going to be your brand.
Okay. And what would a typical branding exercise cost?
Well, obviously, I'm not going to answer that question. Well, obviously, it's very every project is unique. It depends what it is, how big the organisation is. So obviously, I've worked with some of the biggest companies in the world, which obviously have bigger budgets, and I've worked with startups and family businesses.
Sure.
So,
so a family business with £1 million turnover, 4 or 5 staff.
Again, it depends how much work needs to be done to move them from where they are to where they need to get to, and the extent of the deliverables that they need.
Right.
So it's a pretty hard one to give an exact cost.
So you're really not going to answer that question.
No, I'm really not going to answer that question. I think each is individual, and it very much depends on the requirement and what needs to be done. But with, I don't know how other agencies work, but For myself, I'm conscious, particularly with the smaller companies, that it can be quite an investment.
Right.
So I do look at ways to spread the cost so that it's not all very front end loaded.
Sure.
A project will take months rather than weeks to do usually to get from beginning to end.
Yeah.
So it's usually something that puts something together that's manageable for the client.
Okay, fine. And how would a client or a business choose a right agency for them? What makes them connect to the right branding agency?
Well, what I'd suggest is to get 2 or 3 agencies or individuals to come in, either by recommendation or through other routes.
Yeah.
Have a chat with them, give them all exactly the same brief, preferably in writing, so that you can benchmark the proposals that come back. Yeah. Have a look at their credentials, see what they've done before, see how impressed or not you are with that. Mm-hmm. Then once all the proposals come back, which should break down stage by stage what they're going to deliver and what the fees for that will be. Yeah. So that would be obviously a key consideration, would be the cost of the project. And throw into the mix the chemistry. How did you get on with these people? Can you work with them for what is going to be a matter of months? Because some agencies might have the right credentials but maybe not the right chemistry fit. So you need to be sure that you can work with these people. Okay,
so key criteria are experience, cost, chemistry.
Yes.
Great. Okay, thanks very much, Dan.
Pleasure.